All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here. I'm just so thrilled to be at ETHCC. I first came to Ethereum Community Conference back in 2018, and I had just left Bloomberg. I was starting on my entrepreneurial crypto journey, and I never imagined I'd be speaking at the main stage. So thank you so much, ETHCC, for having me. I'm Camila Russo. I'm the founder of The Defiant, the best place to get information about DeFi and Web3. I also wrote The Infinite Machine, the first book on the history of Ethereum. And so what I'm talking about today is the lessons that we've learned from, hopefully, that we can learn from the 2020-2023 bull and bear cycle. Crypto is looking a little bit like a theater right now. And, you know, after 10 years in the space, I'm kind of wondering, is the magic still here? I started out my journey 2013. I was at Bloomberg News at the time, covering markets, and I found out about Bitcoin, this revolutionary money that was allowing people to protect their savings against inflation and currency controls, and it just felt so groundbreaking. Then 2015, I watched how Ethereum brought the space forward, introducing smart contracts. 2018, I was at Bloomberg covering the ICO boom, and though it was a little bit manic back then, there was so much idealism about everything that could be built on the blockchain. It was like, famously, stick a blockchain into anything and it'll be better. And then 2019, I saw the birth of DeFi, and that inspired me to start The Defiant. And then 2020, it was DeFi summer. And sure, there was a lot of craziness at the time, but there was this promise of a truly democratized, open, global financial system. And I thought, you know, like all the excess that we're seeing today, we're seeing it because it's early days. Surely things will start to get better. But I'm not sure they have. So I'm not saying that we haven't made progress. We definitely have. The 2020 and 2023 cycle brought a lot of important developments in the space. So DAOs helped organize individuals across the world towards working towards a same goal. Constitution DAO is a great example of that. NFTs inspired a new wave of users to be excited about owning digital property. Ethereum was able to execute something that many thought was technically impossible with the merge. Layer 2 started actually delivering on a more scalable blockchain infrastructure, and real-world assets emerged as a really important use case that can potentially bridge to non-speculative use cases. But at the same time, the failings of DeFi and Web3 have become more and more apparent. And why do I say crypto is like a theater right now? It's because we're seeing decentralization theater, governance theater, community theater, and DeFi musical chairs. And I'll explain what I mean about each of these, and importantly, how I think that we can do better. Okay, so decentralization theater, it's this idea that so-called decentralized apps, dApps, developers are portraying themselves as decentralized and removing intermediaries, when in fact it's actually, you know, a bunch of dudes in a room controlling the whole thing, whether it's via control of the project's admin keys or because they control all the validators or the nodes in a network. So of course, like the reason for this, it's because it's a lot more efficient to build this way. You don't need to consult with anyone. You just execute very quickly. But the problem is that it reduces censorship resistance, which it's the very reason why crypto exists. It's to have this unstoppable system. But if the team is actually controlling the whole thing, lawmakers can coerce developers into changing the code or even shutting it down. So how can people trust that this can be a feasible infrastructure for the future of finance? How can institutions trust to move trillions of dollars in the system if it can be arbitrarily changed? It's not a very credible way to build the future of the internet and the future of finance. And then lastly, when there's DAOs and Anon founders who are really a facade for centralized teams, it really does put user funds at risk. Because the individuals can be hacked or they can steal the funds themselves. And sure enough, there have been many examples of this happening. This is just one of many such cases. EasyFi lost over $60 million in an admin key hack. The team actually, was I think charged for that, and it's not a one-off. Chris Black, who is a researcher that tracks very diligently these things, I don't agree with everything he says, but definitely agree with this, that the vast majority of DeFi projects still have the ability to enter into God mode and unilaterally make changes. And then L2Beat, this really great data dashboard, shows that code can be changed without notice on many layer 2 networks, including Optimism, zkSync, Era, Loopring, and Starknet. This is concerning because we're basing the entire future of Ethereum on these layer 2s. Then there's governance theater. So another promise of Web3 was that users would be owners of the internet, of the applications, the use of financial services. They'd be able to have a say on how things are run, on how decisions are made, and this would be done through holding tokens. The truth is that governance tokens are actually traded like stocks. People are buying governance tokens because they think it's a proxy to having a stock in a protocol. That's the reality. They don't care about governance. They're not participating in governance. All the data shows that. The truth is, most token holders just care about making money. And then governance tokens are traded like customer acquisition costs. They really are a marketing tool to attract more users and attract more liquidity. This system of one token, one vote has enabled a plutocracy in DeFi, exactly the thing that we were supposed to be fighting. What happens is that because votes depend on who has the most funds, who has the most money, who has the biggest allocation of tokens, teams and VCs are effectively running DeFi right now. So this is just, again, one of many examples of this happening. Arbitrum recently transitioned into a DAO. In their very first proposal to confirm the constitution of the DAO and assign the Arbitrum Foundation, some say hidden in the proposal, or at least not highlighted enough, was the point about transferring 1 billion Arbitrum tokens to the Arbitrum Foundation. In crypto, we sometimes lose track of what numbers mean, but $1 billion is a lot of money to not have at least a discussion on how that will be spent. Worse than that, part of the tokens for this $1 billion that was to be transferred was already moved before the vote was actually approved, showing that the vote was actually just a formality. There's a study that showed that less than 1% of voters in Compound, Uniswap, SushiSwap, and Yearn hold at least 50% of the vote. So since voting is usually based on a majority, it means that less than 1% of voters could determine the outcome of every proposal in these protocols, some of the biggest in all of DeFi and crypto. That's from EA Ventures. The study is somewhat outdated, but things have not changed significantly. Then the next type of theater is community theater. I've talked a lot about DeFi. Now it's NFT's turn, but this also happens in DeFi. And what we're seeing is that NFT projects have devolved into a race to create perceived scarcity, to fabricate these exclusive communities. And the reason to do this is because promoters want to suck people in to drive value to these projects and then, flip JPEGs. Founders are pitching culture and community to sell yet another 10K PFP collection to then rug and then move on to the next scam. Again, one of, unfortunately, many examples of founders and promoters scamming people in the NFT community. This is Frosty's. It's an NFT project where the founders tried to steal $1.1 million, and they were actually arrested for this. Azuki, one of kind of the blue chip or like most well-known projects, the founder Sagabond admitted to semi-rugging or bailing on 3 different projects before starting this one. And then last in my rant is this TVL musical chairs. DeFi has kind of become not decentralized finance, but degens eagerly following incentives. So what we're seeing is that really the same money, the same funds are cycling across the same users. We're missing a connection to the real world. What's happening is that these funds are mostly used to speculate, which means that DeFi remains niche. It's closed off to the mainstream. Only technically savvy, very risk-hungry traders are taking advantage of what was supposed to be a more open, global, and democratized financial system. The numbers show this. TVL, or value logged in smart contracts in DeFi, has mostly hovered between $40 billion and $60 billion in the past year. Monthly DEX volume is stuck at around 70 billion, and monthly users have hovered around 3 million. So again, same money moving around the same people. Okay, so why is this ecosystem doing this? Nobody here has bad intentions. If you're in crypto, it's because you believe in a better future. You're an idealist. You want to change the world. So the reason why founders, developers are doing this and using tools like airdrops, governance forum, valueless tokens, fee switches, anon founders, nonprofit foundations, and DAOs, in many cases, it's not because they actually need it, not because the project is actually decentralized enough to have these things, but it's because it's what they think can keep them off jail, basically. It's what they think regulators will, won't frown upon. But my point with this presentation is that there's no point in doing all of this. We're not fooling anyone, not even Gary Gensler. The CFTC was able to successfully sue a DAO. UkiDAO. It was the evolution of the BCX project. A court upheld that lawsuit. They found that DAO members could be found liable for their actions. It doesn't matter if they're anonymous, it doesn't matter if they're not based in the US, as long as you have some US users saying that you're not marketing to the US is not going to help you, and they'll just come after you. No, it doesn't matter how decentralized you're claiming to be. Even an actually decentralized project like Tornado Cash couldn't escape the grasp of regulators. So, what's the rest of Web3 going to do? We don't stand a chance. They'll come after us anyways. So my proposition, or what I would like to see more in this space, is to decentralize when it actually makes sense, when you actually can decentralize. If it doesn't make sense for your project because of the stage you're in, just don't do it. If you can't do it right, just don't do it. Don't decentralize because you're skirting regulation, because it's a fad, because that's what you think. Again, Gary wants to see. Just build things the right way. So on the decentralization front, starting out more centralized is often necessary, but we just need to be transparent about it. Just don't portray your application, your protocol as decentralized when it's not, and just be clear, be transparent about where in the roadmap you are and what that roadmap is. I believe the Defiant and other media companies, financial organizations, have a key role here to make sure that this is well understood by users and the community. In governance, same thing. If your token holders are centralized, if most decision-making is happening in the team, just save everyone's time. Don't subject people to these governance votes that nobody's attending, and just run the thing yourselves. I mean, you're already doing that. Then in the community front, supposedly exclusive NFT clubs had their time. I think the market is already doing its thing, and most will fade. Some are actually valuable, most are not. So hopefully we'll see this technology, non-fungible tokens, be used for the really groundbreaking thing that digital property can bring, that's beyond collectibles and avatars. And then in the use cases front, the TVL musical chairs that I talked about, to me that's the least concerning. I think it's natural to have this sort of thing in the early stage of the technology that we're at. In this stage, it's those who are able to take the most risk, the ones who are able to put up their capital and play around with these new tools. They're able to help founders battle test their protocols. Real non-speculative use case will follow once we have more liquidity, once the space is more battle tested and a bit safer. But it's not like there are no non-speculative use cases. Going back to the beginning of the talk, to my time in Argentina, I see how people in emerging markets are already using DeFi, crypto, stablecoins to protect themselves against populist government, mismanagement, and actually use this technology to participate in a more democratized and open system. So this is already happening. Again, I think we should just cut the bullshit and build for these users, build and use the technology in the way it was intended. So I think it's time to close these theater curtains and just build and decentralize when we mean it. So that's it. Thank you. Subscribe to The Defiant.